When you have a virus that has already gone to multiple countries, inevitably it will be here. The question is, will we be prepared for it?
We begin with a Fox News alert. We are awaiting remarks from President Biden this morning on his administration's response to the new Omicron variant.
Yeah, it comes as travel restrictions for non-U.S. citizens from South Africa and 7 other countries go into effect today. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning. I'm Carly Shimkus.
And I am Todd Baier. That highly transmissible new variant of COVID-19 has now been detected in multiple countries, including Canada. Some experts say it could already be in the U.S. undetected.
Marianne Rafferty has more on this breaking news this morning. Good morning, Marianne.
Good morning, Carly and Todd. President Biden holding an emergency meeting last night on the new COVID Omicron variant as 2 cases are confirmed in Canada. Biden's White House health team saying they need another 2 weeks to gather data on the variant. But a U.S. travel ban on 8 African nations takes effect today after cases were confirmed in South Africa and Botswana. Nearly a dozen countries already confirming cases of Omicron, and experts say Biden's travel ban will not stop the variant from reaching the U.S.
It's almost definitely here already. Just looking at the number of cases coming off planes this weekend, it's almost a certainty that there have been cases that have gotten into the United States.
The threat of a new variant has Americans bracing for more economic damage and new lockdowns as Dr. Anthony Fauci slams critics of the government's COVID response as anti-science.
So if they get up and criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science, because I represent science.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul slamming Fauci's claim in a tweet saying, quote, "The absolute hubris of someone claiming they represent science. It's astounding and alarming that a public health bureaucrat would even think to claim such a thing, especially one who has worked so hard to ignore the science of natural immunity." And the president is set to update the American people on the White House plan to combat Omicron here in the U.S. just before noon today. Todd, Carly?
That's right, Marianne Rafferty live for us in Los Angeles. Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
All eyes on the Senate following Thanksgiving break as the chamber gets set to address Biden's tax and spending spree.
Yes, as Congress is running out of time to avoid a shutdown with a Friday deadline to raise the debt ceiling. Alexandria Hoff joins us live from Washington with more. Hey, Alexandria.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, ideally, Senate Democrats would like to see this bill wrapped up by Christmas. It's likely, though, that changes will be made to it. That's a process in itself before being sent back to the House for review. Here's Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Are you confident it will get done before Christmas?
I am. You know, if the Republicans want to scrooge out on us and increase people's interest rates and make it hard to make car payments, go ahead, make that case. We're going to stop them from doing that.
But Democrats must first focus on their own party. Negotiations have to satisfy Democratic moderates like Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who have pushed back on the expense of climate, immigration, and paid leave provisions.
One of the reasons that inflation is going to get significantly worse is because of the greater spending we have through Build Back Better. But thank God for Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema at this point. They may be the last line of defense on this thing.
Yeah, the spending plan relies on unanimous support from Democrats. No Republicans are on board with the price tag. Let's break down some of what President Biden's Build Back Better spending plan includes. $450 million would head to job training for climate change careers. $150 million goes towards species protection, $25 million to establish environmental justice initiatives, $150 billion in housing grants, which would be available to felons. It expands early Medicare and eligibility to the incarcerated, and makes felons and illegal immigrants eligible for up to $45,000 a year in government benefits.
For Joe Biden to say we have to spend even more money on top of inflation, I mean, to me, this is Alice in Wonderland logic. He's the Mad Hatter out here. There's not a single Republican who's going to vote for the bill or to raise the debt ceiling. This is on the Democrats.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy week for them. Democrats must also address that debt ceiling again this week after pushing it back in October. The deadline is this Friday. Carly, Todd.
Yeah. Debt ceiling, government funding, BBB, a lot of money talk on Capitol Hill. Alexandria, thank you. Absolutely.
South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace says that this massive government spending will continue until Republicans take the wheel. Listen.
I believe until Republicans are in the majority in 2022, and I believe that'll happen, it'll be significant. We will win at least 24 seats or more. It'll be incumbent upon us to try to reverse some of the policies that will be creating this, and that's going to be very difficult to do if it goes through. But thank God for Senator Manchin and Senator Sinema at this point. They may be the last line of defense on this thing, and we've got to give them the support and continue to show why this spending is so bad.
Republicans need a net gain of 5 seats in the House to take back the majority.
Iran nuclear talks are set to resume today after a 6-month-long hiatus, but the U.S. delegation isn't even allowed in the room.
Greg Palcott live for us in London with the very latest. Greg, good morning.
Good morning, Todd, Carly. Big news coming out of Vienna. Negotiations aimed at reviving those stalled Iran nuclear talks are resuming, but there is little sign of success near. Officials from Iran and world powers are meeting about the pact that tries to rein in Iran's nuclear prowess. The U.S. remains interested, but not directly involved. You recall that former President Trump didn't like the deal and pulled out of it in 2018. There had been talks earlier this year about the arrangement, but they were broken off in June when Iran held new elections. And guess what? Brought in an even more hardline government with tougher demands. Iran wants all U.S. and international sanctions dropped before they even start to talk about their nukes. That is a non-starter, according to experts.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, and the Iranians know that, and we should know that as well. So they're just going to keep talking, keep pushing it a little bit, and we're going to find that within about a year there's a breakout, and there's nothing we're going to do about it. Now you've got a destabilized Middle East with nuclear weapons. That's what President Trump was so concerned about.
Now, even Bret, he's the Mideast coordinator for President Biden's National Security Council, had said recently, and I quote, "We are still hopeful that diplomacy can find a way, but if it cannot find a way, we are prepared to use other options. There is no question we are not going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, period." And it looks like Iran regional neighbor Israel is not going to wait either, with Iran ramping up its nuclear capability and getting closer to that breakout point. That's when they can build a bomb. Israel has openly said it will take its own measures to stop Tehran. And guys, even the UN Nuclear Watchdog Agency is not happy. They have either been roughed up or blocked from their inspections of the nuclear infrastructure of Iran. Very dangerous times. Todd, Carly.
To say the least. All right, Greg Palcott live for us in London. Thank you.
A new book claims Hunter Biden took $10 million a year and an $80,000 diamond from a Chinese energy firm to make, quote, introductions. The New York Post Miranda Devine's new book putting Hunter in the hot seat, exposing hundreds of emails from his laptop along with WhatsApp messages. The book, which goes on sale tomorrow, alleges that Hunter Biden introduced the firm's chairman to his father, who was vice president at the time. This all happening at a 2015 holiday party.
In the book and in the New York Post, she says the Biden family offered their services to a huge Chinese government-linked energy consortium to expand its business around the world. How do we know? Because of hundreds of emails documenting the deal found on Hunter Biden's laptop left in a Delaware repair shop in April 2019. Here's why this matters. So China, through its Belt and Road Initiative, wants to become the world's dominant #1 superpower, squeezing the U.S. out of that top spot. Just think about how they reacted to the Afghanistan pullout. They immediately said that they wanted to go in and talk to the Taliban to gain Afghanistan's rare earth minerals. And then here you have the president's son, who is helping China in that mission.
And yet there's no intellectual curiosity on the part of literally the entire mainstream media on this. When we talk to Concha about this coming up in about an hour, we'll go into the numbers, but I'm going to give you a preview. It's zero. Nobody in the mainstream media seems to care about this, and that is frightening, because if this were an attack on our country, I think people would care. But you have to keep in mind, China is not our friend. They are not just our adversary. They are our main enemy right now because of what they can do with everything that you just mentioned. And the lack of intellectual curiosity on the part of the mainstream media is flummoxing. Do you think now maybe they'll say, oh, wow, this is a big story now? Or do you think it's going to be just like it was before the election, just like it is after the election?
Just like it was before and after the election. So when does this go from Hunter Biden to the president? Also in this New York Post reporting, one of his former associates associates, one of Hunter's former associates, spoke on conditions of anonymity.
It's a tough word.
And believes that Hunter brought the chairman of this energy consortium to meet President Biden, he wasn't president at the time, at one of his holiday parties. And then you have Tony Bobolinsky, who was one of Hunter Biden's former business associates. And he became so disgusted by President Biden saying on the campaign trail that he had no knowledge of Hunter's business dealings that he did an interview with Tucker Carlson. And he said that he had a conversation with Jim Biden, the president's son, brother, and said, you know, if the president decides to run for office again, how are you going to be able to do this? Because you have all these deals with China. Yeah. It's going to make the president look really bad. And then Jim Biden said, you know what, plausible deniability. Just don't put his name in writing, and then they can go forward with it.
And that story wasn't just ignored by the mainstream media. It was literally blocked by social media so that the mass of America could not find out about it.
We're going to talk to Joe Concha coming up a little bit more about why this matters and the fact that you'll only hear this story here. In the meantime, several Arizona State organizations, Arizona State student organizations rather, demanding Kyle Rittenhouse get kicked out of the university. Rittenhouse is taking online courses at the school, but ASU Students for Socialism say others, quote, don't feel safe knowing he's enrolled at the university. Several student organizations are planning to gather at an on-campus protest this week. In a letter to the university, the organization says, quote, even with a not guilty verdict from a flawed justice system, Kyle Rittenhouse is still guilty to his victims and the families of those victims. Join us to demand ASU that those demands be met to protect students from a violent, bloodthirsty murderer.
Where have we come in America that kids think that they can ignore our deeply entrenched justice system and ignore evidence that was presented in a court of law and a jury of his peers found him not guilty and say, nope, we got to get rid of this guy out. He can't be in college anymore. He can't become a nurse to then help people in the future.
Well, Todd, I think you bring up such a good point about the age of these people who are demanding this. And it always happens like this. It's like, you know, these CEOs of these massive companies and presidents of universities get bullied around by kids. I just hope that the heads of ASU say, listen, you 18-year-old socialists, you know, this person was vindicated. He was found not guilty in a court of law, so you could take your feelings elsewhere.
It goes to this broader picture, sticking on this kid's notion for a moment, that, I mean, look at AOC. She's the kid of Congress, and she thinks that their socialist position is what the nation must follow, ignoring the fact that literally the majority of Americans, whether you're liberal or conservative, you are not socialist. And yet these people, these are you read it, the ASU Socialist Club. This guy's got to be gone. We're in charge. No, you're not. You're not in charge. You make up a very, very small percentage.
Yeah, they also want to reaffirm support for the Multicultural Center on campus as a safe space from white supremacy. Okay, that's fine. But they also want to defund the police. I think they want to move some funding from the on-campus police department to a multicultural center until, God forbid, something bad happens. You got to have police on campus.
Yep. Let's get to football.
Let's do that.
NFL action now. Lamar Jackson throwing 4 picks, but it didn't matter. His Baltimore Ravens finding a way to beat the Cleveland Browns 16-4. That's one of the picks. We're not showing you the rest of the win. This guy, wow, he went off. Bucks running back Leonard Fournette scampers for a 28-yard touchdown. Last few seconds there. Tampa outlasting the Colts in Indy 38-31.
Okay, and the New England Patriots roll to their 6th straight win, beating the Tennessee Titans in dominant fashion, 36-13. Aaron Rodgers outduels Matt Stafford as the Green Bay Packers defeat the LA Rams at Lambeau 36-28.
And finally, Daniel Jones and my New York Giants.
He owns the team. Did you know that?
Taking down their NFC East foes, the Philadelphia Eagles, 13-7. And for those of you wondering, I did comment to the person who used to sit in that very chair about the game, and we actually talked about real estate and not about the game.
Oh, okay,
so that just shows how vicious we took that rivalry to the core.
Still very good friends, I see.
Yes.
Absolutely. The time is now 14 minutes after the hour. Critics are calling President Biden's Omicron travel ban worse worse than usual. New York Councilman Joe Borelli tells us why. Coming up next.
Plus, a big show still ahead. Chris Prudhomme, Dr. Marty McCary, Carrie Severino. That's a tough transition. Marty McCary, Carrie Severino.
You did a very good job.
Thank you. Joe Concha and Congresswoman Claudia Tenney all live over the next 2 hours of Fox and Friends First. Don't go anywhere.
A New York City official who has strongly supported slashing police budgets is being slammed for living in a highly secure Army base in Brooklyn. The Big Apple's public advocate, Jermaine Williams, lives in civilian housing in Fort Hamilton, where he benefits from free round-the-clock security. Residents are saying Williams' address is hypocritical, and his call to defund the NYPD poses a serious risk to the safety of the city. Williams is running for governor of New York.
Who knew you could do that?
I didn't know.
Travel restrictions from South Africa and 7 other African countries taking effect today in an effort to stop the spread of the new COVID-19 Omicron variant. GOP lawmakers, though, calling the ban useless.
Joining us now, Joe Borelli, who is a New York councilman. And Joe, the criticism is that this travel ban was announced on Friday, goes into effect today. So why wait?
Well, that's the fundamental question, right? I mean, two things cannot be true. This is such a deadly variant that we know of that we have to take these crushing steps of banning travel from several countries. It'll be more countries, by the way, because Omicron was discovered in a bunch of European countries right now. So that can't be true if we're also saying that this doesn't take effect till Monday to sort of get the last round of people from those countries into our countries. I wish some of the media hype men that get to interview Anthony Fauci every chance they get would ever stop to ask him some pressing questions, like specifically what countries instituted travel bans that saw no spike from the Delta variant or any of the other variants in the past. The answer is there are none because these don't work.
There's also the underlying hypocrisy comparing administrations, spelled out beautifully by Elise Stefanik. Here's her tweet. When President Trump took bold and decisive action in February 2020 to impose travel restrictions into the United States from coronavirus hotspots, Joe Biden attacked him, calling this decision a disgrace and xenophobic. I mean, that's a question. Why is it okay for Biden to put in a travel ban, but when Trump does it, it's xenophobic?
And look deeper into that question. When Trump suggested a China travel ban, there was a great deal of unknown about the coronavirus. There were no treatments. There was no vaccine. There was no effective way to remediate some of the symptoms, right? Now we're almost 2 years in advance, and we have all those things. The Democrats are now doing what they call Donald Trump racist, homophobic, and xenophobic for, despite the fact that we have a host of treatments and a large percentage of our population, especially where I live in New York, are fully vaccinated.
Yeah, Dr. Fauci is also facing criticism for an interview he did yesterday, saying that he represents science. Watch this.
Travel bans, when you have a highly transmissible virus, never completely would get the virus to prevent it from coming into the country. No way that's going to happen. But what you can do is you can delay it enough to get us better prepared.
Criticize science, nobody's going to know what they're talking about. But if they get up and really aim their bullets at Tony Fauci, well, people could recognize there's a person there, so it's easy to criticize. But they're really criticizing science, because I represent science.
He represents science, he says, but the thing is that there are many different opinions in science and medicine, and critics have pointed out that his opinion differs very much from others when it comes to natural immunity and whether or not we funded gain-of-function research, Joe.
Well, first of all, anyone who refers to themselves in the third person is a bit odd to me. But you're right, Carly. I mean, this is someone who deserves to be questioned. This is someone who most likely lied to Congress when they were under oath testifying about a very serious pandemic. So this notion that he represents all of science, this notion that he's unquestionable, is really goes against almost everything we stand for in the United States. We're supposed to criticize our government. We're supposed to question their intentions, motives, and outcomes. And that's what, in this case, I think Senator Cruz was doing, and that's what I think a lot of the public should start doing.
Joe represents Staten Island.
Well, but he actually does.
He actually does.
That's true.
Quickly, Kathy Hochul represents the state of New York. She is doing this no elective procedure ban in hospitals. But, Joe, isn't that the antithesis of public health? 20 seconds to you.
Yeah, it's knee-jerk reaction. Governor Cuomo did this when we were seeing hospitalization rates of 230 people a day. We're at about 30 people a day right now. So this is her, stamping her feet, trying to look like she's taking some action, but it's more just knee-jerk reactions at this point.
Yeah, to say the least. I mean, to already postpone elective hospital surgeries in anticipation of a virus that we know very little about is a bridge too far, as some might say. Joe Borelli, thank you for joining us this morning. We so appreciate it.
We represent TV.
Well, not all of TV. Okay. Just, the 4 to 6 o'clock hour on one channel. The time is now 24 minutes after the hour. The country is facing inflation and a supply chain crisis. And here's how Senator Amy Klobuchar wants to fix it.
Obviously, in the long term, we've got to bring down greenhouse gases. We've got to get the investment done to do something finally about climate change.
Yeah, they're keeping with this climate change thing, aren't they? Well, a fourth-generation farmer who fled California to avoid Senator Amy Klobuchar claiming she has the solution to fixing supply chain issues and the inflation crisis. Listen.
We've got an increased demand, shortage of supply. The petroleum reserve was a temporary measure. Obviously, in the long term, we've got to bring down greenhouse gases, and we've got to get the investment done to do something finally about climate change.
That's it. There's the answer. Let's close it up. We're good. The Build Back Better bill would spend over $600 million on climate change initiatives. The House passing a version of the package right before Thanksgiving, but the bill facing an uphill climb in the Senate.
Yes,
Carly.
Absolutely. In the meantime, the Nash family has been in the dairy farming business for 92 years, but that soon may come to an end amid climate change-related regulations and economic hardship. Stephanie Nash, a fourth-generation dairy farmer, is here to tell us what her family's farm has been going through. And Stephanie, you say that the dairy industry is under attack. Tell us how so and what sort of challenges your family farm is facing.
Well, you look at the numbers since 2003, over 45,000 dairy farms have gone out of business. And, coming from California, UC Davis studies, environmentalists, scientists, agriculture lovers, 5%, it's the largest agriculture county in the United States, the Central Valley, and the largest dairy state. And only 5% is going back into emissions, and they forget to talk about transportation being over 50%. You look at Cowspiracy. On Netflix, they push 51% on people sitting at home thinking that agriculture is the problem when we're really not getting deep down into transportation, electricity, everything else, housing developments, taking up land to be sustainable.
You bring up those numbers. Stephanie, I thought those numbers were stunning. We have them right here. The number of dairy operations in the U.S. declining. In 2003, there were over 70,000 dairy farms. Now there's less than 32,000. Are you worried that your family farm is going to shut down? It's been in operation for almost 100 years.
I'm really worried about regulations. I'm worried about a state tax. I'm worried about fake numbers getting out to people sitting at home, making decisions when they go to the grocery store. They don't even know where their food comes from anymore. And as a farmer, as ranchers out there, we are asking people to just get educated and ask the farmer. I am really worried about this climate change going through politicians, going back into government spending and not actually going to the sustainability and keeping family farms in business.
Yeah, we were just talking about the Build Back Better bill. There's a lot of money in it regarding climate change. How would that specifically affect your family farm?
Moving from California to Tennessee, we feel a little bit more comfortable. But when they talk about trying to tell us how to farm, when, people like my dad have been doing it for over 50 years, and they come into our property and they tell us what we can sell and what we can do, that's where we're going to get a little bit tricky. Yeah. When they're not increasing prices for milk, but they're increasing prices for the grocery store, farmers are not getting anything in return with feed prices increasing. We have a supply chain issue. We can't get parts during harvest if a tractor breaks down. You look at the farm bill, they put $1 billion back into the processing and lost profitability for the farm.
Tennessee Senators Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty, who knows, they may be listening to you right now. So what would you like to see out of Washington that would make things easier for you?
I want farmers in a position to where we can actually give advice. If I could get one farmer from every state telling people in Washington, D.C. what is happening, I really do believe that we can make an impact, and we don't have a platform that does that. Bring farmers to Washington, D.C., discuss what we need, and then go from there to save our family farms across America and sustain for the world.
I think that sounds like such a good idea, Stephanie Nash. You're using your voice now. And also, I was watching a FoxNews.com video with you in it. You're also a beautiful singer. I was very impressed by your singing voice as well. Hopefully you can go to Washington and speak about this issue, because our farms are some of the most important things we have. They're our food source. Thank you so much for your hard work and for joining us this morning.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you bet. Todd?
Yeah, thank you.
And for your singing. Time now, 34 minutes after the hour. Democrats weighing in on who they would put at the top of their ticket if Joe Biden decides not to run for president in 2024. We'll tell you who's making the cut and what it means for the GOP.
Stay away from a boy like that. He wants a
The residents of Waukesha marking a solemn moment Sunday, honoring the victims of the parade attack exactly 1 week later. The mayor leading the residents in a moment of silence at the exact moment the town's Christmas parade was viciously attacked. The town also asked residents to put a blue light outside their homes, the mayor calling it the color of unity, to honor those who lost their lives during the Christmas parade, the town Christmas parade. And about 40 miles away, the town of Grifton also honoring the Wisconsin victims during their own Christmas parade. This as a 9th child is released from Children's Wisconsin Hospital Sunday. A total of 7 children are still recovering in the hospital. 6 people died in the attack. More than 60 were injured. Senator Lindsey Graham says the left will be held accountable for their soft on crime policies.
The chickens are coming home to roost when it comes to